A very good morning, students. Welcome back to online classes on PPS, Programming for Problem Solving course. In our previous session, we discussed about the syllabus. We have seen the course outcomes, and I briefly described all the topics in your 5 units, starting from first unit to the last 5th unit. We briefly described all the concepts. We said we are going to learn a new programming language in this semester, and the name of that language is C language. So learning a programming language, we said it is more or less same like learning a natural language. So whenever we are learning a natural language, we are focusing on the constructs of that natural language. Constructs are nothing but the building blocks of that natural language. So if you take the example of English as a natural language, learning English language means learning the nouns, pronouns, adjectives, adverbs, tenses, all these things. Because we consider all these things as the building blocks or the constructs of that natural language, constructs of English language. So same like English, whenever we are going to learn a programming language, we also need to learn the building blocks of that programming language. So being a programming language, C is also having certain constructs. Okay, so to know the C language, we need to understand those constructs, and those constructs are nothing but your control statements, functions, arrays, pointers, structures, unions, files, all these things. And when we have seen the syllabus in our previous class, we have seen that uh, all these programming constructs only divided into 5 units, isn't it? So in the first unit, we are going with basics. In the second unit, we are learning operators and control structures. In your third unit, we are learning functions. Fourth unit, your pointers and structures. Structures and recursion. And the fifth unit is pointers, files. So likewise, all these programming constructs, they have subdivided into units in your PPS curriculum. So throughout this semester, we study about these things. We try to get the knowledge of these things so that we will be able to write programs, we will be able to develop applications in C language. Okay, that is our course outcome. Okay, uh, yeah. In this session, quickly we get into the first unit and we see some of the basics from your first unit. So this is the structure of your PPS course we have discussed in our previous session. Then the syllabus divided into 5 units, and the number of sessions to complete these units I have given clearly. So the first unit, internal topics, introduction to the programming. The 3 chapters we said: introduction to programming, idea of algorithm, and representation of algorithm. So these 3 chapters, to complete the first chapter, I need 4 sessions. Second chapter, 2 sessions, and third chapter, 6 sessions. Overall, to complete the first unit, I need 12 sessions. Okay. So quickly, we get into the first chapter, that is introduction to the computer. And in that, we need to see what exactly a computer is. Okay. So when we talk about a computer, what exactly you know, and what exactly it is defined in your textbook, we have to differentiate. Okay. So quickly, when we are talking about a computer system, first of all, I define the computer as an electronic device. Why electronic device means? Because it is made up of so many electronic components, isn't it? Electronic components in the sense, maybe you might have studied in your physics in your intermediate level that electronic chips we are going to have, like transistors, resistors, capacitors, all these things. Okay, diodes, all these things. So when we talk about all these things, they are electronic components. Okay, electronic elements. So if you open your computer and if you see the internal uh, parts of your computer, many of those parts, okay, many of those parts, they made up of what we call these electronic components only. Okay, so when your computer is made up of all these electronic components, we can easily call your computer as an electronic device. Okay, hopefully you understood the reason for calling the computer as an electronic device. So if you see the first point over here, I clearly mentioned a computer as an electronic device. Okay, so having an electronic device, there must be some reason, okay, behind it. So that reason, because it performs the operations. Operations are nothing but some sort of calculation, some sort of computations for the user. Whoever is using the computer will perform many different operations. Okay. Okay, those operations are nothing. I mean, how it will perform those operations in the sense it will accept the data. Accepting the data is nothing but taking the input. Okay, your electronic device, your computer will accept the data, stores the data, not only accepting. If you need the data for future, you can even store the data into your computer. So that is storing the data or saving the data. In your terminology, we can call it as saving the data, taking the input and saving it for future purpose. Okay, and manipulates the data. So whenever you want to edit that data or whenever you want to change that data, you're completely flexible. Your computer is completely flexible to do that for you. Okay, not only accepting, taking input, not only storing, saving the data, but it can even manipulate in the sense it can even changes the data for you. Okay, uh, changing, and also the processing is also possible. Processing is nothing but performing some sort of calculations with that data, some sort of transactions with that data. Okay, so accepting the data, storing the data, manipulating the data, as well as processing the data. Okay, and how the data will be processed or how the data will be manipulated in the sense it needs some sort of instructions to do so. Already I told you in my last session, I mean previous session itself, that the computer is completely a dumb device. Okay, completely a dumb device. Having the hardware ready, it is completely useless. Okay, having the hardware in hand or having the hardware ready, it is completely useless without installing or without loading the software into it. Okay, so these software is nothing but it is a pre-stored programs. Okay, pre-stored programs are nothing but every program over here, it is a collection of instructions. So instructions to perform certain task. Whenever you are hiring the labor for a job or whenever you are hiring some team for a job, so definitely you have to give the instructions to that team, as we discussed in our previous session. So without instructions, the team is completely unknown. What it has to do, it is completely unknown to the team. So in that same manner, having the computer ready, if you don't give the instructions to the computer is completely unaware what it has to perform or what it has to do. As we said, it is a dumb device. So definitely it needs instructions to perform actions. So in that same, I mean, how your team of people need instructions to perform their actions. I mean, what sort of job you want the labor to do, the team of people to do. You have to tell, isn't it? Without telling, I mean, If you don't explain the job to the team, they are completely dumb. So in that same manner, the computer is also completely dumb if you don't explain the job to the computer. That explanation, how we are giving, means in terms of programs we are giving, where every program is a collection of instructions only. So when I am saying program, computer program, you remember the definition of a computer program as a set of instructions, as a collection of instructions. Okay, hope you understood this one. So all these tasks are performed at high speed and accuracy. The advantage of having a computer in hand is the computer will perform all of your operations with a high speed. Okay, and moreover, when human beings will perform the job at high speed, there is a possibility of losing the accuracy. But over here, that is not the case. Your computer will not only performs the jobs at high speed, but also performs with 100% accuracy, we can say. With 100% accuracy. Okay, if the program, if the instruction given is perfect, if the instructions given to the computer is perfect, then the computer will perform the job according to the instructions with 100% accuracy. Hopefully you understood. So that is the advantage of having the computer. That is the reason the computers are taking the control on every single job nowadays. Okay, so quickly, once again, we elaborate, we go through that definition. So the first definition, a computer is an electronic device. The reason for calling the computer as an electronic device is very simple, because the computer is made up of all electronic components. Okay, and the computer will perform the operations such as taking the input, saving the input, processing the input, and giving the result. And the last point we said, it is completely a dumb device and it needs instructions to perform the operations, and those instructions are nothing but computer programs. And all these tasks, whatever tasks the computer will perform, all these tasks it will perform at high level of accuracy. Okay, at high speed it will perform, at high level of accuracy it will perform. Hopefully you understood. So that gives the first definition of our computer. Then we go to our second definition. If you see what they are saying here, a computer computes the data. Okay, computes the data. That data, how we are giving to the computer in the form of input. So a computer computes the data supplied to it and generates the information. Information is nothing but output. See here, uh, you need to understand the difference between data and information. Data is something like a bulk, like a collection, like a huge set. Okay, so um, I will give you one simple example so that you understand the difference between data and information. So let us assume our college database. Okay, our college database. In our college database, we are having the information related to all the students, those who are currently studying in the college. Okay, so the students of uh, first year, second year, third year, final year, and then we also have PG courses like MBA. So the students of information, or the data of those PG students as well, and all the faculties working in the college, their details, everything we are going to have inside the college database. So that college database, if you consider that thing as data, okay, then what is information? In the sense, for you the information is your specific details. Okay, in that huge set of data, I'm also having my details, isn't it? I'm also having my details. So for my concern, information is my related data. Whatever data I have related to me, I call that data as information for me. Okay, But whereas if you consider the complete database, we can call that as a data. So I will explain that thing here. See here, this is my whiteboard. So if you have all data, okay, if you have all data like where we are having the information related to all the students, faculty, everybody. So we call this entire thing as a database. Okay. So this database is nothing but our data. This database is nothing but our data. But whereas if a particular student is approaching the database and he's taking his own details, he's taking or he's viewing his own details, then we call such details as information. Such details as information. So this difference you have to understand. So data is a bulky thing, information is specific thing. Data is a bulky thing, collection. But whereas information, it is specific to a party. Okay, specific to an entity. Like that you can define. Hopefully you understood. So quickly go to the slide now. So what, see here, if you have the database, if you have the records of all the students, all the faculties getting your details, don't consider the um, computer over there. Don't consider the computer or don't consider the searching process over there. If you have all those things like a file, okay, like a physical file, then what you have to do? You have to go through that physical file and you have to check your details manually. It is a time consuming process, as well as you need to pay some effort over there before getting the details. Isn't it? Effort as well as time consuming. Two things it is taking. But if you have that same records inside a computer, then what you have to do, simply go and type your name over there. Isn't it? Open the application, open the interface, and over there simply type your name and perform the search operation. So what the computer will do, it will search for your name inside the database and it will give the details to you. Isn't it? So over here, when the computer is coming into picture, okay, uh, um, when the computer is coming into picture, it is taking your name. Isn't it? To perform the search operation, it is taking your name. That name is nothing but input to the computer. That name is nothing but input to the computer. Okay. And not only, after taking the name, what it is doing, it is taking the complete database to perform the search operation. Isn't it? Where it is performing that search operation, inside this entire database, it is performing the search operation. So for the computer, we are giving two things as an input: your name as well as this database. Your name as well as the database. So database is the input to the computer, and what we are getting as an output, your specific details, because based on that name only it is performing the search operation. So after performing the search operation, it is giving your specific details. So that specific details are nothing but information. So if you read this definition, the second definition over here, a computer computes the data. That data is nothing but input to the computer and supplied to it, and gives the information and generates the information. Information is nothing but output, specific details. So this definition also you have to remember. And there is another definition, or we can say the third definition is the simplified version of the first definition. Okay. So here a computer is an electronic device which takes the input, processes it, and gives the output according to the user needs. So it will not simply generate the output as it wants, as the computer wants, but rather it will generate the output based on the user needs, how the user wants that output. In that same way, in that manner, it will generate the output. So if you see the definition, the third definition, a simplified version of the first definition, a computer is an electronic device which takes the input, processes it, and gives the output according to the user needs. So this definition also you have to remember. Okay, so far we have seen three definitions. The first definition, it is a more elaborative version of the computer. The second definition, uh, simplify, I mean, easy version we can say, and the third definition, the simplified version of the first definition. And there is another definition, the fourth definition. Uh, we can call the computer as a collection of two things, as a combination of two things. Okay, one is hardware and the other one is software. So inside a computer we can see these two things: hardware excuse me, hardware as well as software. Okay, so if you see the fourth definition, the last definition, a computer is a system made up of two major components, hardware and software. So yeah, here we need to discuss what is hardware and what is software. Okay, in our further study we'll do that only. So what is hardware we'll come to know, and what is software we will come to know. So this picture, it depicts the view of your computer. Generally when you see a computer, so it will have a display device. Okay, a display device, something like this, a screen where you will see the output generated by the computer. So this screen is always responsible for viewing the output only, isn't it? Is there any other purpose of this screen? No, it is always responsible for viewing the output. So we call this as a output device, or more specifically we can call this thing as standard output. Standard output. Okay, so this thing, it is the heart and brain of the computer, isn't it? This generally we call this as a CPU, but this is not the exact CPU. Inside it we are going to have the processor. That processor is nothing but your central processing unit, CPU. So we can call this as the cabinet. Okay, computer cabinet, where we are going to put all the necessary elements of a computer. Okay, the memory devices, the memory is nothing but the storage devices, the processing unit, the heating, the cooling, everything we are going to keep inside it. The graphics part. Okay, uh, different types of connectivity ports, all those things we are going to have inside this cabinet. Okay, this is not the central processing unit, rather it is a cabinet, or we can say it is a box where we can keep all the necessary elements of your computer. So many people ask me, sir, whether to consider this cabinet as an input device or as an output device. Means, as we said, okay, it is not a single device, it is going to have multiple devices, so we cannot exactly say whether it is an input or output, or we can consider this cabinet as both input as well as output devices. Okay, then we have the keyboard. We call this thing as keyboard. And we have another thing, this is your mouse. Okay, so this keyboard and mouse, these two things are our input devices, because we use these devices mostly for giving the input. Okay, mostly for giving the input to the computer, so we can consider them as input devices. Keyboard and mouse, they are always used to give the input to the computer, so we can consider them as input devices. Okay, so this keyboard, it is a special thing. Without mouse it is possible to run the computer, but without the keyboard it is not possible to run the computer, because always whenever you are opening a computer you need to give some sort of input to it. Okay, before it processes it, some sort of input you have to give to the computer. So that input, at least the keyboard is required to give that input. So we call this keyboard as standard input device. Not just input device, but a standard input. Standard input device. So hopefully now you understood. So our output device, that is monitor. Okay, The screen, the monitor, we also call it as standard output because it is the minimum thing which requires to check the output or to see the output. Then the keyboard, it is the minimum thing to give the input, so we call it as the standard input. Hope you understood all these things. So quickly from our next slide, we need to elaborate the hardware as well as the software. So first we see the hardware. So what is hardware? What is computer hardware? In the sense, all the physical components, all the components which you have inside your computer, which you can see, which you can touch, which you can sense, we call them as hardware devices or hardware components. Your keyboard, your mouse, your cabinet internal parts, your monitor, okay, your I mean, many times you use joysticks to play the video games, the joysticks, or if you have the writing pen, okay, many of the times we use the pen which is connected to the computer. So that thing I'm doing right now, so it is a pen using which I'm writing on the computer. So we can call this also as a hardware component of your computer. Okay, so whatever devices, whatever components, physical components which you can easily touch and feel, we call them as hardware components. It may be your webcam, it may be your microphone, it may be your speaker, okay, whatever it may be. It may be the keyboard, whatever it may be. All the devices, all the components which you are directly connecting or indirectly connecting to the computer, all those things will become the hardware components of your computer. Directly in the sense through a cable, indirectly in the sense wirelessly. uh, we have different technologies to connect wirelessly, isn't it? So whatever devices connected to your computer, we call them as hardware devices of your computer. So these hardware devices, okay, first of all, examples, many different examples I have given so far, isn't it? So the hardware components of your computer system can be classified as, I mean, all these devices. So we said many different devices we are having. So all these devices, they have been categorized into three different types. The first type is the input devices. So it is always necessary to give the input to the computer before performing any sort of action, any sort of transaction, any sort of work from the computer or inside the computer. So we need input devices first of all. Then the second thing, the processing unit. Whatever input you are giving to the computer, it will be processed by the computer. So we need a processing unit. And the third thing, the output devices. So after processing the input, it will generate some output. That output to check, we need output devices. So how many categories of your computer hardware? Three different categories. The first thing, input devices. Okay, so to represent input devices, we use I slash P. Okay, I slash P. So whenever you see I slash P in your uh, what we call discussion, you just consider it as an input device. Okay, so then processing unit, that is nothing but central processing unit, your processor, CPU. Then output devices, O slash P. Okay, if you see the block diagram of the computer, the block diagram will have only the input devices, output devices, and the processing unit. So an arrow you should draw from input devices to the processing unit, and from processing unit to the output devices, because the data flow generally happens, or data flow generally occurs in this direction. From the input devices, we give the data input to the processing unit, like with the help of keyboard, with the help of mouse, with the help of microphone. What we are giving? We are giving the input. We are giving the input to the computer. Okay, so that input will be processed with the help of processing unit. Processing means either you can do the manipulation or you can do the storing, whatever you want you can do inside the processing unit. Then we have the output. Output, it is generally used to give the output to the user. That output may be in the form of the visual content or the audio content. Isn't it? Two different types of outputs possible. One is visual content. We can see the image, or we can see the video on the screen, or we can see the text on the screen. that is visual content, and also audio content. Audio content in the sense we can listen to some music, listen to some audio generated by the computer. So that form of output also possible with the help of a computer. There is another, I mean, if you go to more modern type of computers, there is another type of output possible which performs a real-time task in the real world. A robotic hand, a robotic manufacturing unit will manufacture some product for you. Okay, so that type of thing is also possible. That type of output is also possible from a computer. It is a more advanced concept. It is somewhere related to robotics and other stuff. Okay, it is too early to discuss such advanced levels of things right now. Okay, so we limit our discussion up to the visual as well as audio output. Okay, so yes, this is the block diagram. Using the input devices or the input unit, we are giving the input to the computer. That input will be accepted by the processing unit. The processing unit is responsible for storing, processing, manipulating the data. And once the data is manipulated in the form, it will generate the output. And to view that output or to see this, I mean, see, listen that output, we are using, we are taking the help of output devices, isn't it? So these are the things related to the hardware, and we need to discuss the uh, three categories, that is input devices, processing unit, and the output devices. So this is the block diagram, a more elaborated version of block diagram, we can say, a more clear picture of internal physical components of the computer over here. Okay, see the block diagram. So generally they ask this thing for 7 marks. As an LAQ, they ask this thing. If you see the previous year university question papers, many of the times they ask these questions. Okay, of course, not in AICTE model paper, but in CBCS and in non-CBCS, it was an LAQ. So if they asked it that time, there is a possibility that they can ask this time also. I mean, in AICTE model curriculum also. Hardly we have 3 to 4 papers in AICTE model curriculum. So before judging whether they will ask this question or not, we need more what we call papers. Okay, so yeah, if you see the right side to the CPU, we have all the output devices, and the left side to the CPU, we have all the input devices. And inside the CPU, we have ALU, control unit, memory unit. These three things. Okay, quickly we see what are my input devices. So already we had a discussion on these input devices. Input devices are helpful to give the input to the computer. Like this also you can write. No issues. No need to mug up. No need to by heart the textbook content. If you understand the concept perfectly, you can easily narrate your answer. Okay. So input devices means they are helpful in giving the input to the computer, like your scanner, keyboard, mouse. All these are examples. Not only this, we have other type of input devices as well. So a webcam. Using webcam, what we are doing, we are giving input to the computer only. It will record the real world elements. It will record, isn't it, in the form of picture. It will record and it will give as an input to the computer. And microphone, what it will do, it will take the audio input inside the computer that I am doing right now. This is my microphone, and using this microphone I am recording my voice, isn't it? And I'm using a webcam over here to record my visual representation, how I'm looking over here, how I'm teaching how I'm delivering the lecture. To record all those things, I'm using a webcam. So this webcam is an input device, and this microphone is an audio input device. Webcam is in video input device. Microphone is an audio input device. So I'm writing using this touchpad and this pen. I'm writing the uh, content on my screen. So this is also input device. The touchpad and this touch pen, it is also an input. I'm writing over here, as you can see on the screen. I'm writing. So how I'm doing this one, in the sense with the help of pen. So this is also an input device. So a joystick, many people use these joysticks to play the video games on the computer. So those joysticks comes under input devices only. Okay, touch screens, joysticks, touch pads, writing pens, all these are examples for input devices. Okay, so next thing, CPU. Inside CPU we have ALU. ALU stands for arithmetic and logical unit, control unit CU, then memory unit MU. About these three we discuss in our further slides. Then we have the output devices. To take the output from the computer, we use output devices. Again, output devices we have many. The standard output device, your monitor, and if you want to print the content on a paper, then we need a printer. If you want to listen the music from the computer, then we need speakers. So speakers also a form of output devices. So all these things are examples for output devices. Okay, so input devices used to give the input to the computer, or used to enter the data into the computer. Examples: keyboard, mouse, scanner, microphone, camera, etc. Okay, output devices are used to take the information output from the computer. If you have the output, to view that output or to check that output, we need an output device. So the examples are monitors, your printer, your speaker, etc. Okay, so if the output is shown, I mean these two things, because I have seen this thing in one model paper of OU, Usmania University. They asked the difference between soft copy and hard copy. It is a 2 marks question, short answer question. They asked what is soft copy and what is hard copy. So see, when we are talking about a document, okay, a document, we are having two different things. So suppose if the document is in PDF format, it is stored inside your mobile or stored inside your computer, you can open it and you can see the content, you can check the content. So whatever document in the form of PDF you have inside your mobile phone or computer, we call it as a soft copy. Okay, a soft copy, many duplicate elements you can create. If you want 100 copies of that one, simply what you have to do, copy and paste. That's it, it will generate the second copy. Duplicates, okay, many duplicates you can create. As many duplicates as you want you can create without wasting any real world resources, isn't it? Simply what it will waste, it will waste the memory inside your computer or memory inside your mobile phone, it will waste. Okay, but when it comes to hard copy, the same document, if you want in the physical world, not in the virtual world, if you want that copy in the physical world, then what you have to do, you have to print it on a paper, isn't it? So that printed copy we call it as an hard copy. Okay, so if you have the document printed on a paper, A4 size paper, that physical copy, we call it as hard copy. Soft copy existing inside the computer, hard copy printed on a paper in the physical world. Hopefully you understood. So see the difference. Soft copy duplicates you can create as many as you want without wasting any real-time element. But whereas if you want more copies of more hard copies of a document, then you have to go for wastage of papers, isn't it? You have to take the white paper, that white paper, I mean if you want 10 copies you need 10 white papers, if you want 100 copies 100 white papers you need. So definitely for a hard copy we need to waste the real-time resources. Hope you understood. So hard copy, soft copy, 2 marks question you have to remember. So then the processing unit, see input devices, output devices we discussed. So now we are discussing the processing unit. So many times we call this processing unit as central processing unit as well, CPU. Okay, what exactly it is in the sense your processor. Many of the people knows what is a processor. I no need to give the explanation on that one, I guess. It is a chip kind of thing where we are going to have many transistors connected and which is responsible for performing the it is something like a brain and heart of your computer, isn't it? So the CPU is responsible for executing instructions. So what it will do, it will execute the instructions, whatever instructions you are giving, to the computer to perform a certain task where those instructions will be executed, in the sense inside a processor only those instructions will be executed. So if it is having any kind of calculations like arithmetic calculations, comparison between the data and movement of data, all those things will be performed with the help of central processing unit only. Okay. uh, yeah, in modern day computers, we are not talking about the classical traditional computers where we are going to have only one processor. In modern day computers, supercomputers or hyper supercomputers, in those type of computers we are going to have multiple processors, more than one processors. Okay, more than one processors. uh, Within a CPU, we have three major parts, that is ALU, CU, and MU. ALU stands for Arithmetic Logic Unit, CU stands for Control Unit, and MU stands for Memory Unit. Arithmetic and Logic Unit, Control Unit, Memory Unit. Okay, these memory unit, it is further divided into two types based on the behavior of the data which is stored inside the memory. It is further divided into two types, that is volatile memory and non-volatile memory. Okay, volatile and non-volatile memory. What is volatile memory? In the sense, if you store the data inside that memory and if the power goes down, okay, to that memory device, the data stored in that memory device will be deleted permanently. Okay, you have the memory device, you stored some data into that memory device, and suddenly the power gone. Okay, power is stopped to that electronic device or to that memory device, then immediately what will happen? The data whatever you have stored in that memory device will be deleted. Okay, this is volatile memory devices. And then we have non-volatile memory devices. It is opposite to the volatile memory devices. So inside non-volatile memory devices, you stored some data, power gone, still the data remains unchanged. Okay, still the data is persistent. Then we call such devices as non-volatile devices. Hopefully you understood the difference between volatile and non-volatile. Very easy. It completely depends on the power supply. Okay, uh, if the power supply cut and the data lost, those devices are volatile devices. If the power supply cuts, still the data remains unchanged, still the data exists, we call such devices as non-volatile devices. Very simple to understand. So okay, those two are categories. Now we have the types of storage devices. Okay, in a general purpose computer, we may find the following types of storage devices. The first one is primary storage devices, auxiliary storage devices, cache memory, and registers. Okay, four different types. Primary, uh, we also call it as main memory, or we can also call it as random access memory, that is RAM. Okay, RAM or ROM. These two things are primary storage, primary memories. Okay, primary memories. Primary memories are something where the processor will have direct interaction. Okay, processor will have direct interaction. Processor will first go to these memories only, either RAM or ROM. So that's the reason we are calling them as primary memories or main memories. Okay, so then we have the secondary memory, where the processor will not have any direct interaction. Okay, secondary, we call them as secondary memory. Okay, example, your HDD, hard disks, or CD, DVD, whatever you are connecting, and also the pen drives, all these comes under your memory cards, all these comes under your auxiliary storage devices or secondary storage devices. Okay, and the third type of memory is cache memory. Okay, and then we also have registers, CPU registers. So we discuss all these things. So the first type of memory, that is primary memory, we also call it as main memory, a place where the programs and data are stored temporarily during program execution or during processing. Temporarily, When we are saying temporarily, it means volatile, isn't it? Temporarily means volatile. If the power goes down, the data goes down. Okay? If the power goes down, the data goes down. So primary memory, both random access memory as well as ROM, they are directly in touch with your CPU, central processing unit. Whenever it wants to interact with the memory devices, it first goes to this RAM and ROM only. It don't go to secondary storage devices, that is auxiliary storage devices. Okay, the data in primary memory are erased when the computer is turned off. Okay, if the computer turn off, immediately what will happen, whatever data you stored inside these primary storage devices, it will be erased. That's the reason we are calling them as volatile memory devices. Okay, so primary memory, it is available in two forms. One is random access memory, RAM. Other one is read only memory, ROM. Okay, RAM and ROM are examples for primary memory. That is nothing but main memory, and it is volatile memory. Okay, so read only memory, ROM, it stores the data and instructions even when the computer is turned off. It is a special type of primary memory, or it is a special type of main memory where the data is not volatile. That means even if the power goes down, the data inside ROM remains unchanged, remains existent. Okay, so the content in the ROM can't be modified once they are written. I mean, who are responsible for writing the data inside a ROM? In the sense, the manufacturers of the computer. We as a user, we are not able to access this ROM, and we are not able to store something inside this ROM. Only the computer manufacturers, they have written something inside this ROM, and that content will remain unchanged throughout the lifetime of your computer. As long as you are using the computer, your ROM content, it will remain permanent. Okay, it is used to store the BIOS information. Maybe all these are some technical terms that we don't need over here basically. Okay, so being a professional of IT, information technology, you must know all these things. So that's the reason I'm just giving an idea over here. It is too much. What I mean to say, it is too much. Okay, so it is used to store the BIOS information, which is helpful in loading the operating system into the RAM from the HDD. So generally, where we store the operating system files, in the sense inside the hard drive, isn't it? Inside the hard drive we store, and we said your processor will not have any direct interaction with the hard drive. So if the operating system is stored on the hard drive, permanently stored on the hard drive, and if the processor is not having any direct interaction, your computer will not turn up, will not turn on for you to see the output, for you to see the content, isn't it? So before processing the content, or before giving the output on the screen, the operating system must be brought into the ROM, into the RAM, that is nothing but random access memory, where the operating system will reside temporarily. Okay, so to give the output or to see the output, the operating system will reside inside the RAM temporarily. Okay, so actual permanent operating system files will be available on the HDD, and temporarily they are available on the random access memory. Okay, so you need to understand this difference. So then we have the random access memory, RAM. It stores the data and instructions when the computer is turned on. So when the data is available inside the RAM, in the sense only when the computer is turned on. If the computer is turned on, if the computer is having the electricity, having the power to it, the content of RAM will exist. And once the electricity to the computer is goes off, okay, uh, then what will happen? The content of RAM will be erased, and the next time when you are turning the computer on, again you have to load the content into the RAM so as to see the output. Okay, if the at one point, assume that the power, there is no UPS, there is no uninterrupted power supply to your computer, and the power has power has gone. So then what will happen? Your computer will shut down automatically. Okay, like an flick, your computer will go off. Okay, then what you have to do, when next time when the power comes up, what you have to do again, you have to start the computer, and the computer will do the booting process. What is that booting process? Booting process is nothing but loading the operating system from the hard drive to the RAM once again. So all these are some technical terms uh, that you need to understand. Definitely, as we get into the subject, as we get into the syllabus, so saving of files, editing of files, many things we discuss over there. You will understand all these concepts very clearly. Okay, execution of program, we will discuss how that execution takes place. Everything we discuss in detail. Okay, so about ROM, even though it is a primary memory, main memory, its content are non-volatile. That means whatever content the manufacturers has stored inside the ROM, they will remain permanent. RAM, random access memory, it is volatile, and every time you start the computer, the content from the HDD, the operating system files from the hard drive, will be copied into the RAM. Okay, so whatever we see on the screen, we can say it is a um, virtual picture of your RAM only. Okay, whatever exists inside the RAM, that only displayed on the screen. So next thing, secondary memory, that is nothing but auxiliary memory. The content of these devices are permanent. Okay, the auxiliary memory content or the secondary memory content, they are permanent. Even if you cut the power supply to these devices, to these memory devices, whatever data you have stored inside these devices, it will remain, it will exist. Okay, it will not be deleted, what I mean to say. Even when the computer is off, even when the power supply to these devices goes down. Okay, the programs and data remains in the secondary storage ready for use next time. Okay, once you saved the files on the hard drive, even after some times like 1 month, 2 months, 1 year, 2 year, even after that period of time, you open the file remains unchanged if you have not done any modification. Okay, so then these secondary storage devices, we have two different types. One is magnetic storage and the other one is optical storage. Okay, some brief explanation is given over there. I will make you understand that one, what is magnetic tape storage and what is optical storage in one simple example. So uh, we are music lovers, isn't it? We love to listen music. So in olden days, there were tape recorders. Tape recorders. Okay. So there only, in that name only, we have the complete explanation. I mean to say, tape recorder. Okay. We used to use cassettes, isn't it? Tape recorder cassettes we used to use in that one. So there we are going to have a film, a magnetic film kind of thing inside that cassette, and where the audio content will be recorded, isn't it? So that form of data storage they used to do in olden days. Okay, so that is best example for magnetic storage. So what we are having in that magnetic film, in the sense a kind of magnetic field we are going to have over there, which will hold the data for a period of time. Okay, so whenever you record something on that magnetic film, on that magnetic storage, magnetic tape, whatever you are recording, it will remain permanent on that one. And whenever you put that cassette into the tape recorder, you can listen to that music. And even if you want to delete that data, I mean delete that music, delete that song, and if you want to add a new song, there is one such flexibility, isn't it? We can delete the previous old song and we can add the new song on that same cassette. So like that we can do. Okay, that is magnetic storage example. Then we have the optical storage, that is nothing but your CDs and DVDs. Okay, optical storage devices. In magnetic storages, we use magnetic field to read and to write the content on that magnetic tape. Okay, magnetic field is used to read and write the content on that magnetic tape. In optical storage devices, we use laser beams. Okay, a sharp laser beam is used to read the content from an optical CD compact disc, and to write also we use the laser beams only. To read and write we use laser beams. Hopefully you understood this one. So not only the primary memory, not only the auxiliary memory, we also have other form of auxiliary devices, other form of memory devices like cache memory and CPU registers. They are the costliest memory devices, we can say. Cache memory is the super fast memory. Okay, and it generally available between the main memory and the CPU. Okay, main memory and CPU, we have this cache memory. And the content of cache memory, once again, they are volatile. That means if the power goes down, the content will also be erased. Okay, they are maintained in very small amount. The reason, they are very costly. So like if you see the hard drives, nowadays we have hard drives in terabytes, 1 TB, 2 TB, 3 TB, likewise 4 TB. Okay, likewise we have hard drives in terabytes. Then we have the main memory, that is nothing but RAM, random access memory. We are having in GBs, isn't it? Hard drives, TBs, they are slower and they are cheaper hard drives. That's the reason we are maintaining them in bulk amount. Then we have the primary memories, that is random access memory, RAM. They are, compared to hard drives, they are faster and they are a bit costlier. Compared to hard drive, they are a bit costlier, and we maintain the RAMs in GBs. Then we have the cache memory. Cache memory, it is super fast memory, and it is very costly. So we maintain it in a limited amount, like in MBs we maintain 2 MB cache, 6 MB cache, 4 MB cache, likewise we maintain. Okay, then we have the last one, CPU registers. They are the internal components of your processing unit. Internal to your CPU, we are going to have some storage elements, and we call them as CPU registers. Okay, so they are the internal memory locations of your CPU. The data inside the CPU is stored in these registers for processing, and these CPUs, they are way too costlier. Okay, way too costlier. So we generally have these CPU registers in bytes and KBs, kilobytes. Okay, so the hierarchy you have to remember: hard drives, far slower, cheaper, we maintain them, I mean, bulk in amount. Then RAM, compared to HDD, compared to secondary storage, RAM is faster, costlier, and we maintain it in GBs. Then cache memory, and finally the CPU registers. So if you see all these things over here, so this is another diagram to explain all that thing. We have the keyboard, we have standard output monitor, then we have printer, these are disks and tapes, then this is my primary storage, that is nothing but the RAM or ROM, then we have the CPU. Okay, central processing unit. Like this, you can see all the devices, all the hardware components of your computer in one picture, one single picture. So this is a more real-time version of the picture, we can say. So here we have the monitor. These are the speakers, keyboard, mouse. Okay, this is your cabinet. As I said, this is your cabinet case, and inside this cabinet case, we are keeping all these things. See, all the arrow marks pointing towards this case only. So inside this thing only, we are going to keep all these things. So we have the power supply, we have DVD-ROM, we have the motherboard, CPU fan, then we have RAM, we have VGA graphics card, then we have sound card, then hard disk, okay, then a card reader. Okay, reader all-in-one internal, so it will read different types of cards. Okay, so like this, if you put all these things inside the computer case, this will become your cabinet. So don't consider this thing as a CPU. Your actual CPU is this one. Your actual CPU is this central processing unit is this one. Hopefully you understood. Okay, so next, in our next class, in our tomorrow's class, or in our next working class, we will discuss about the software components. Hopefully you understood. Thank you very much, students. And see, I will frame some questions from this video that you need to answer to get the attendance of this session. Hopefully you do it. And attendance this time, as we are warning you people, we are very much specific about the attendance. Without attendance, believe me, we will not allow you to write the internal exams. It is very clear statement I am making over here. Okay, I don't know about the last semester, but this semester, as we are online and attending the sessions is equally important as writing the internals. Okay, so you simply don't think that we can skip these videos, we can skip these classes, and we can go to the internals and we can get the internal marks. It is not like that. And moreover, the department, HNS department, it has taken a decision that we need to award the assignment marks based on the attendance only. If you are attending these video lectures and if you are answering the questions in the attendance Google form, you are eligible for assignment marks. Without that, don't expect that I'm going to give marks liberally this time. Okay, thank you very much, students.